For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard, we will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Hey! Yeah! All right. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. It's great to have you guys with us. The mothership is hovering over Mother Earth, and we're going to have an incredible show for you tonight, talking about UFOs at wartime. Very interesting topic. How are you guys tonight? Matt, Andrew, in the oddball control room. How are you guys?
We're doing well.
Excellent.
Good. All right. This is our last show of the year, so let's make it a good one. Go out in a blaze of glory. So here's the crazy thing. I was talking to my dad today. He served in Vietnam. He flew, planes, reconnaissance planes, and I was telling him about the subject tonight. And he was telling me he could name many a pilot who could talk about UFOs over Cambodia. So it's something that's in the family. Really cool topic. So we've been asking you folks, email us at info@30oddminutes.com, and you have. We got this email this week. And Andrew, do tell.
Yes. It says, Dear 30-odd Minutes, I just wanted to let you know we are running your show here in Windsor, Connecticut in a regular weekly time slot on both our Access Channel 5 and Education Channel 95.
Education?
Education Channel 95. Keep up the great work. Jenny Howan, Station Manager, Windsor Community Television.
All right. Welcome, Windsor, Connecticut. Thank you, guys. Good to have you with us. And we have a shout-out, too. Matt?
All right. Want to say a big hello to Bill Prince of Massachusetts, who donated to the Oddball Cause this past week. Thanks for keeping the mothership's engines running.
That's true.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. They do. They run on hope and a dream and money, just like anything else, I guess. Cool. So, all right, tonight, UFOs. It's a topic that we've covered before, but not quite like this. And so we asked our own Dr. Dreck down in the lab, do UFOs exist? What were your findings, Dr. Dreck? Do tell.
Hello, friends and fiends. Dr. Dreck here, and we are talking about whether UFOs actually exist. And I happen to have an expert here who is the editor of Skeptical Guy magazine. His name is Michael Quark, and he is going to answer this important question for us. So, tell me, Mr. Quark, do UFOs actually exist?
No, there's no such things as UFOs. They are hoaxes or mistaken witnesses. So keep moving along, folks. Nothing to see here. I have to get going. I'm sorry.
I understand. Go ahead. Well, there you have it, straight from the mouth of the Skeptical Guy editor. Ooh. Gee, I guess we're having an earthquake here, Jeff. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Dreck, for that field report. Very good. Well done, sir. All right. Tonight, UFOs. Here's the thing. We don't know everything that's going on in the skies above us. That's certainly true. We never have. There are satellites, meteorites, commercial jets, and secret government vehicles that we're not supposed to know about. But are there extraterrestrial spacecraft hovering around us? During war, there's a lot of violent activity going on. It's in the skies, in the seas, and on the ground. You have thousands of highly trained military personnel on both sides of the conflict who are looking for radar information. They're watching the skies because that information could mean life or death for their comrades. It's critical. Throughout history, unexplained objects have shown up in the skies, especially during times of war. Has the U.S. government shot down some of these craft before? Are there governments that are harboring alien spacecraft? We're going to find out tonight. Very excited. Our guest tonight is the son of a World War II veteran. He's a longtime writer and researcher, and he's the author of over 40 books, including his latest, UFOs in Wartime, What They Didn't Want You to Know. Beaming to us live from the North Shore of Boston, please welcome Mac Maloney.
Yeah.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. It's a little rocky up here in subspace, but we're holding it down okay. Appreciate you coming with us.
Glad to be here.
All right. So you've written a bunch of books, many fiction books, and this is your first nonfiction book in 20 years, I understand. Is it tough to make the switch between making it up and researching this kind of topic?
Well, it was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. It is a little bit easier when you're making it up, but I enjoyed doing it, and I'm pretty pleased with the results.
Right. So, for those who don't know, your book, it's a collection of a lot of research, a lot of accounts from various people throughout history. You go way back, but only a little bit. I mean, the bulk of the book really sticks to 1900 or so and forward. And really, talk about various cases, naming names where you can, and really interesting because we know, and I mean, you watched the news recently. Iran, of course, got one of our drones, one of the U.S. drones, went down in Iran. We're not supposed to know about that, but hey, it made the news. It looks like a mini stealth fighter. So certainly, in times of conflict, lots of technology comes forward that we're not supposed to know about, and sometimes it's going to get captured. But do you think that explains all of these sightings?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it certainly explains some of them because in times of war, especially in the 20th century, you have a lot of airplanes flying around up there. You have a lot of people looking up in the sky, looking at the airplanes. And as you said later on, you have radar in the airplane. So, in many cases, I suppose you could say that they're just misidentifying identified objects. But there is a certain percentage and a large percentage, especially during wartime, where you cannot identify what these pilots and other people are seeing up there.
All right, let's go chronological here for a minute. Let's start all the way back in 1933 or so in the skies of Scandinavia, ghost flyers. This is one of the early reports of something that just is doing beyond what aircraft can do. Tell us about ghost flyers.
Right. Well, it's a very strange story. In 1933, as you say, the people in a very desolate part of Sweden called Verboten started seeing these very strange airplanes. They were very large. They had 8 engines. They had a twin tail boom, which is a little bit different than the aircraft of the day. And they had pontoons, and they also had searchlights at the bottom of their fuselage that would be shining down at the ground. So these things started showing up late 33, and then for most of 1934. And people would see them doing strange things. They would circle villages endlessly, railroad stations, mountains. They would fly in all kinds of weather, blizzards. And, of course, because you're up near the Arctic Circle, the winter is just nonstop and the night is nonstop. And the Swedish military sent up planes to look for these things, never found them. Pretty soon, people in Norway and Finland started seeing them. And they would see more than one. They would see 2 or 3 flying in formation. They were very loud. That was another thing. So they attracted a lot of attention, and they lasted for almost the entire year of 1934 until they finally went away. And no one ever figured out what these were. People thought they might be Germans or Russians or whatever. But if you go back and just look at what the Germans and the Russian aircraft were at the time, they didn't have anything like these planes. Plus, they didn't have the support systems to keep 20 of these planes flying night after night in bad weather for almost a year. So it's a complete mystery who these planes were, who were flying them, where they went. Just a big mystery.
And what's interesting about it is that everything that you're describing doesn't sound space age. It just sounds maybe a decade or two ahead of the time, not so much centuries or millennia ahead of the time. But at the same time, but still ahead of the time. So intriguing. Now, World War II heats up pretty soon, a few years after this, and you've got a lot of pilots that are reporting strange things in the sky. Now, quick reminder to the audience, UFO means unidentified flying object. It doesn't necessarily mean spacecraft extraterrestrial, although we'll get into that. But it does mean unidentified. It happens, frequently. What could these things be? So let's get into World War II a little bit. Allied planes are on these sorties, and they're reporting discs in the sky, things like that. Are they getting called crazy? What's the repercussion?
Well, at first they were being called crazy. These things started showing up in early 1942 when the British were doing most of the bombing over Germany. And the British would bomb at night, so these things would show up at night. And they'd see these, they were all kind of shapes and sizes. A lot of them were sphere-shaped. A lot of them looked like rockets, but a lot of them looked like your standard flying saucer or the cigar-shaped object. They would come back and land at their bases and be debriefed by the intelligence officers, and they would tell them, but there was just a complete mystery. They had no idea what these things were. There was a prevailing feeling that they might have been German super weapons, and they just figured, well, after the war is over, if we win the war, we'll find out what these things are. But when the war was over and they asked the Germans about them, the Germans basically said, we thought they were your secret weapons. So no one ever really figured out what the Foo Fighters were.
The Foo Fighters. Now, we actually have some photos here to talk about. And no, Eric, no, that's the band. Dude, really? All right, that joke was there. We go. Thank you. So let's talk about the Ray Smith incident, May 27th, 1943. What did he see? What happened?
Well, he saw pretty much what you see in that picture. They were coming back from a bombing raid on Essen, Germany, and he was a Canadian pilot who was flying for the RAF, and they saw this enormous craft in front of them. It came up from behind them, and then it flew in formation with them and in front of them for quite a long time. In fact, they started shooting at it, but there was no effect in it at all. And they just couldn't believe what they saw. They came back and reported it. But once again, the intelligence officers their main purpose was to see how the bombing went. They really didn't have the time or the wherewithal to try to figure out what these strange things were.
Yeah, no, and popping up again for multiple pilots. Mac, we do have a question for you from our chat room. Matt, Andrew, do tell.
Yeah, Julian here wants to know, could any of these UFOs be connected to the UFO at the Battle of Los Angeles?
Okay, that's a great question. Battle of Los Angeles. Is there a connection between what we're seeing over Europe and what was spotted over Los Angeles? Before you answer that, let me just pop up this newspaper headline. This was big, folks. This was a really big deal. This was February 24th, late at night, to February 25th, 1942, over Los Angeles. Close to what, Mac? 1 million witnesses to this thing? Tell us about it.
Yep. At the time, there was about 2 million people living in Los Angeles, and there was a lot of defense plants there as well. So there was a lot of anti-aircraft batteries around the city, a lot of military in the city, and a lot of civil defense people in the city. And, they got word that they thought the Japanese were going to bomb Los Angeles that night, so everyone was kind of on edge. And then, sure enough, later on that night, these things start showing up first on radar and then visually. Lots of people saw them. Lots of reporters saw them. We quote a lot of reporters extensively in the book. And they just looked like flying saucers. And the anti-aircraft batteries opened up on them. For 2 hours, they were shooting at them. 6 people were killed on the ground from falling ordnance. And then we have that famous photo of the UFO caught in the searchlights over Los Angeles. It's an amazing photo. No one ever figured out what they were. And then later on, when the war was over, they asked the Japanese, did you have any planes in the air over Los Angeles that night? And the Japanese said, no, they didn't have the capability to get that close to the west coast of the United States to do anything like this. So there was never an investigation done on it, but they figure at least 1 million people saw UFOs over Los Angeles that night.
Here's the crazy thing, just to put it in a little more of a context. As you said, you've got all these military manufacturers nearby. They built entire fake towns over the buildings to look from the air like it's some kind of suburb. And then that night, 1,400 shells were fired at this thing. You saw the photo; those little dots were shells exploding. 1,400 shells. So you're not talking about one crazy trigger-happy person who sneezed and started something. No. Hours, and as people in LA hear all the explosions going on, they come outside, and all the accounts talked about a very slow-moving craft that was in no hurry to get out of there, no hurry to evade. 1,400 shells that were being fired, and as you said, caused damage and death on the ground, and seen by so many people. And it's one of those things, I guess call it the fog of war or whatever, but we never did get a good explanation for this. And that's right here on home turf. That's right. Not even in the theater of war. L.A. was was not in any theater of war. It was just a potential target. So amazing. So flying discs, things like that. Now we do know the Nazis were developing various craft. The Haunebu. We've got a photo of this. So this is. It looks like a flying saucer. They had various versions of this. And between 1939 and 1945, the first version held crews of 8. The later versions held larger crews. That looks to me a lot like your standard flying saucer, Mac. Does this account for some of the sightings?
I really don't think so. I know that there are a lot of reports out there that they were working on these types of things, but just from a historical point of view, the Germans by 1942 and 1943 were running out of resources for everything. They're running out of steel and rubber and fuel and so on and so forth. They were even building parts of their jet fighter. They did have a jet fighter, the Me-262, but parts of that jet fighter were made of wood because they were so short on metal and steel. So I don't think these things were German weapons. There's no evidence at all of any of the Foo Fighters ever firing at our bombers. If the Germans were controlling these fantastic weapons, why didn't they just fire at our airplanes and knock them out of the sky? Why didn't they fire at our troops on the ground? Plus, when the war was over, like I said, they asked the Germans about this. No huge manufacturing facility was found that could produce these fantastic weapons. And they asked the Germans, what were they? And the Germans said, we thought they were your secret weapons. So I really don't think that that the Germans got any of these flying saucer-looking craft to actually fly.
All right, fair enough. Matt Moniz, our own ufologist in the house. Tell me about what do you think of these things? And where would they even get the idea for a disc-shaped craft, I mean, in the 1930s and 40s?
Well,
I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We'll get back to you, Matt.
I thought you said Matt.
You got two UFO experts that are both named Matt. That's good.
Matt and Mac.
Yeah,
close, right?
There you go. But in 1937, supposedly a craft came down in Germany, and they supposedly back-engineered some of the equipment in it. You also had the Glock, which was the Nazi Bell project that they tried working on in Poland and stuff like that. So there is a history of them trying to create craft like that, like Mac said. But the technology supposedly came from an earlier crash.
So that's the thing. Wartime brings out whatever latest weapons we have. But also, now this is where, and let's hear the fiction writer speculate a little bit. I guess we're an interesting planet if you're an extraterrestrial species, and war would be rather interesting, but do you really want to fly into the middle of all the flak and missiles and bullets?
Well, I don't think they're extraterrestrial.
Okay.
I think what we're looking at is, I think that that they're time travelers from our future.
Okay.
And I just came upon this as I was doing the research for the book. If that explanation kind of fits more of the puzzle pieces than Little Green Men from Mars. As you said, why would you, if you had these fantastic aerial vehicles, why would you want to be flying 100 feet off the wing of a B-17 bomber as it's bombing a German city with lots of flak, lots of German fighters, unless you just wanted to be there seeing history as it's being made? So I just think that there's a possibility that they are time travelers from our own future coming back to see history as it was happening.
Time travel is Exhibit A, right? Time travel is a very intriguing topic to me. And one of the skeptics will say, the reason there can't be time travel or that it can't be possible is that, and to counter the point, is that at great historical events, we would expect to see tons and tons of out-of-place people. So at the crucifixion of Jesus, we would expect to see 1 million, maybe multi-millions of very out-of-place witnesses. At the signing of the Declaration of Independence, at the Gettysburg Address, where are these accounts of people way out of place? Now, maybe, I mean, I accept the notion of time travel, absolutely. And I understand wanting to see, the history being made, as you said, like World War II and things like that. But yeah, where did they go and why not back further? I mean, have you taken that a step further to see other historical events where time travelers may have shown up?
Well, we do have a number of stories in the book that that people have seen. Let's say UFOs going back. We go back to 300 BC. Right. But I think maybe the idea is that you don't see. You're right. You don't see millions of people at the crucifixion. I just have a feeling that in an odd way they're either historians or they might even be someone along the line of tourists who are coming back to see, what it was like living here. And the fact that we don't see them or we don't know what they are, there could be a chance that they know that the first definitive photo of a UFO doesn't appear till, let's say, January 15th of 2018. So they know they can do anything up until that point and not be found out.
Right.
The time travel thing just kept coming to me kind of gradually as I did the research, and it just made a little more sense than these crafts coming all the way here just to watch us kill each other.
Right. I guess no. I mean, it's a good point. It's a fair point. You could get away with having something in the sky in the 1900s and so on because there's stuff in the sky up there. All right, that's really interesting. So let's talk about things like the USS FDR, which we've got a photo of that. Many a UFO sighting. This was the first nuclear aircraft carrier and carried nuclear weapons, right? Carried nuclear weapons, and so of interest. Is there something about the power of the atomic bomb that's drawing interest from time travelers or others?
I think so. It seems like whoever these UFOs are, or whoever's controlling them, are very interested, especially when we started to get nuclear power. The aircraft carrier, the FDR, it was the first. It was commissioned right after World War II ended. It was the first U.S. Navy carrier to carry nuclear weapons, and for some reason, UFOs just dogged it for the 30 years that it was in service. There's at least 5 instances where UFOs were spotted over it. At one point, the CIA went through the ship talking to everyone after there was a sighting off of Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. There were sightings in the North Atlantic. There was a big sighting off of Rio de Janeiro where the ship would just be docked and UFOs would show up over it and hover there, and the entire crew would see them. And then the final incident was in the Mediterranean in 1962 where UFO approached it and they launched fighters to intercept it, and it just hung right out over the aircraft carrier for a long, long time and then disappeared. And after that happened, the captain just told everyone involved, don't ever talk about this again. When they decommissioned the aircraft carrier later on, they found out that all the ship's logs were wiped of any instances having to do with UFOs, but there were so many people who had served on that ship who knew about it and had seen UFOs that's how the story was able to get out and continues.
Now, speaking of nukes, you've got another artist depiction here. June 16th, 1966, just a few miles east of Kansas City, Missouri, there was another incident. Can you tell us about this, a UFO over an ICBM site?
Well, that's another very scary thing because, and not many people know about this, is that throughout the 60s and the 70s, as soon as we started putting ICBM silos in the middle part of the country, UFOs started showing up over them almost immediately. And what these things are is they're nuclear-tipped missiles that are in the ground, and these were the things that we were going to hit Russia with should there be World War III. And UFOs would show up, and they would shut off all the electricity to these things. In some cases, they retargeted the missiles. They shut off the communications. Many people saw them, but once again, the Air Force, one thing they're good at is they're good at covering things up, and they've managed to really cover this whole story up fairly well. Peter Jennings, before he died, did a UFO special on ABC, and he actually talked extensively about this. But other than that, not many people know about this outside of the UFO community. It's very scary when you think a UFO can, hover over your ICBM base and shut it off or retarget the missile. That's a pretty incredible event.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, frankly, I don't think I want my government telling me that, by the way, some force that we don't know about can turn these things off or on or whatever they want to do with them. I mean, that is frightening. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would cover that up too. And that begs the question. If we put you in charge of the universe, which we might, don't get me wrong, you're in the running, would you tell everyone? Would you spill it all? Do you think the truth should be out there, or should we cover some of this stuff up?
No, I think it should be out there. I mean, if UFOs are what people think they are, I mean, some other intelligent life force, some other intelligent beings, and our government isn't telling us, they're keeping one of the biggest secrets of our human existence from us. And that's not something that certainly the U.S. military should decide whether we know or not, and certainly not the politicians. So this is a huge... It's a secret, and whatever the answer is would be a huge, just think of what it would do to our civilization. And I think if they know something, and I do believe they know something, I think they should tell everybody and let the chips fall where they may.
Right. I mean, there's been sightings over the nation's capital. We have a photo of that as well that you sent us. UFOs over Washington, D.C. It happens. It happens over major cities. It's not just the backwoods. It's not just, things like that. At some point, do you think it becomes overwhelming? Do we put forth enough of these YouTube clips and these photographs and these stories that, they have to change their ways. Do we have any allies within the government that are trying to get the information out?
Well, there might be, but I can tell you this. I talked to people who are in the military, and I also know people who are connected with some of the U.S. intelligence services, and also I know a lot of airline pilots. And they will tell you fantastic stories, but only off the record.
Sure.
They will not go on the record with these things because it threatens their careers. So we may have, allies within the government, within the military, but they're not going to talk about these things.
And that's a shame. We had, I remember a famous quote by President Bill Clinton when he was president saying, if this stuff is real, I want to know about it. I mean, do we believe him? Do we not believe him? But at the same time, hey, Matt Moniz, we know that various governments over the last few years have been releasing some documents. Are we gaining insight, Matt?
Some, and on a couple of occasions, they kind of embarrassed this country because they're outing, certain events that happened in their country where our military responded, but our country denied being there. Yet another country has official documents of, them dealing with it. I'll give you a perfect example: Bentwaters.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And not only in the 80s and the 50s.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, for a long time. And that's the thing. I mean, now today, so many people are armed with video cameras on their phones, and so many of these clips are turning up again and again on your website, and there'll be a link to your website from ours, of course. You've got some incredible clips where you've got jet fighters chasing discs, doing some incredible maneuvers at high speed. You at one point threw out, well, the first definitive UFO sighting might be, a decade or so from now. But how many more? I mean, I think we've had them, haven't we? I mean, over Israel, over Washington, D.C., again and again. At what point is the evidence overwhelming? Do you think we'll ever convince everyone?
Well, the famous line is that you won't convince everyone until a flying saucer lands on the White House lawn.
Right.
And, maybe it does take something like that. But what I think should happen, and we say this in the book, at the end of the book I talked to 4 or 5 UFO researchers, and I asked them, how do you think this is going to be solved? This puzzle, how do you think it's going to be solved? And one of them said that what you have to do is, Jerry Clark, who's a very prominent UFO researcher, he says what you have to do is you have to take it out of the hands of the military, take it out of the hands of the politicians, and give it to the scientific community. Let them study it by scientific methods and see what they come up with. And he felt that once the scientists were on the job and funded, we might find out what these things are fairly quickly. He thinks it's going to happen in about 40 years. I hope he's off in his timeline so it happens during our lifetimes. But he thinks eventually the scientific community will be the ones that kind of solve this puzzle.
So if it is a time traveler, and maybe they're sticking to the air because, but even being in the environment, we can get into a whole other show topic here with split, parallel universes and things like that. But by being seen, aren't they altering the past? Aren't they? We've taken shots at this thing, as you mentioned in your book that there were times where civilians were killed as military craft are pursuing UFOs. Is it is that even responsible? Are they altering the past by coming back here?
When people look back on this history, let's say people look back on our history before that mythical date of January 15, 2018, they'll say, well, people did see them up until that point. They just didn't know what they were. Now, after January 15, 2018, we know what they are. They're all around us. People have this impression that UFOs try to hide, but they're not. I think there's something like 3,000 or 4,000 sightings a day around the world. They've been with us for centuries. They're not trying to hide. They're just there, and we can't comprehend what they are. So we go about our daily business not knowing what they are. And I think that's kind of like their cover. A lot of people would like to believe them, but you need that definitive proof. It isn't here yet, so people don't really believe them.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, Mac Maloney, we have run up right against the end of the show. We appreciate you coming on. Again, the name of the book is UFOs in Wartime. You can pick it up online at your favorite bookseller. We'll have links to it from our website. Appreciate you coming on and talking about this, sharing some of your research. It's an incredible topic. I'm sure a lot of military personnel out there are going, we've had our sightings too. Come forward, talk to us, talk to Mac, reach out to him. Right. And until next time, for all of us here, stay odd. Right on.